Hello and welcome to the third and final Charlie Spotlight interview. My name is George O'Connor, the writer and co-creator of the new comic Charlie Spot, and today it is my great pleasure to introduce you to letterer Taylor Esposito. If you're a Wednesday warrior at your local comic book shop, you've seen Taylor's work, Image, Dark Horse, all over the place. He's pretty much lettered everybody. So it was an incredible thrill to get him on Charlie Spot. And I'll go into this in the video, but the professionalism and expertise he brought to the project and how he elevated the lettering to make this book as good as it could possibly be, I will be ever thankful to him for. And letterers don't get enough credit for what they bring to the process, so I am thrilled to put this spotlight on Taylor during this interview. I hope you dig it. The reason you are here, and the reason I'm thrilled you are here, is when I was looking for a letter for Charlie Spot. I had known your name because I'm a Wednesday warrior, and so I've seen your name in all sorts of books. And a mutual friend, Aubrey Sitterson, recommended you. And when I was looking into it, it just so happened to be around the same time that I was at a convention. I was walking around Artist Alley, and I noticed multiple Artist Alley tables, grinders just like me, with books with your name on it. And as I was starting to flip through them, what became abundantly clear is that you, no matter if it's an Image book, Dark Horse, Vault, or one of the grinders in Artist Alley, the care, the time, the thoughtfulness, the creativity is in all of those books. And when I saw that kind of like level of care and professionalism, for the on the smaller ends of the rung all the way up, that's when it just locked in that I absolutely wanted to work with you. And I'm beyond thrilled with what you brought to Charlie. Again, that creativity, the care, the time, and then you went above and beyond to help me as a letterer, myself. You did some hand holding with me and some education, and I appreciate all of that. So I just wanted to, I wanted to start this thing up with just flowers and love being sent through the internets towards you, man.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. So I think, first of all, I don't know how many letterers get interviewed, so I'm very excited about this because I know just enough about lettering to know how much I don't know about lettering. And when you hear anybody else from the creative side of comics talk, there is always the, what was no one gets into comics because they think, oh, this is the gold mine. This is how I'm going to get that mansion on the hill. It's kind of all born out of a love of comics. So I want to know the origin story of Taylor.
It was totally by accident. I'd never expected to get into comics.
Say that again?
I never expected to get into comics. I was out of college looking for just any work, and a friend of mine was working at Marvel, and he's like, "Hey, you want a temp job? It's like 2 days." I'm like, "Sure, why not?" And 2 days like snowballed into like a couple weeks and a couple months, and then I never left. And then by the time I was done at Marvel, I'll fast forward a second where I eventually got laid off from there, along with like a bunch of guys. It was a big thing, but I ended up becoming assistant production manager to the Bullpen. So it was like, well, I'm here, may as well do it, And while I was there, during my time in production, I got to look at how the comics were put together, and I don't know, I just got fascinated with the lettering. And then once I got laid off, it's like I got serious about, all right, maybe I should do this because I'm interested in it. So I kind of self-taught, kind of figured things out. And then funny enough, a year to the day, I got laid off Marvel, I got hired at DC,
Mm.
which is a nice little cap on a crappy year, I guess. Um, and then that led to like almost 3 years of DC lettering on staff. I got to learn from the other guys there, which was really great. Like I went from being like, okay, I can kind of do this to I'm pretty good at this, and I'll never say I'm actually good at it. I'm always going to be like, I'm pretty good at this.
Like a true artist.
And then, yeah, right. And then when DC went out to Cali, I didn't want to go. So I put in my time. I was saying I'm going to go freelance, and I've been doing it since 2015. So 5 years. Woo!
So before that Marvel gig, were you a comics fan?
Oh yeah, no, I was a fan.
Okay.
Like it was never just like it was like it's one of those things. Like it's cool, but I'll probably never do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I never gave it a second thought. And I was like, well, at worst case, it's a story to tell later. Oh, I used to work at Marvel. Well, look where we are now.
So no, before Marvel, no aspirations to write, draw, create.
No, I mean I knew I wanted to do something in art. I went to school for graphic design, but I
Okay.
never. I never gave it much. It was kind of like I went to college undecided, and like after a first semester, I kind of like, okay, I'll do graphic design. And then I got out of college and I was like, well, what do I do now? It was kind of just like that. Um, I'm not going to say I didn't go looking for work. I did go looking for work, but like it had only been like 6 months or so since I graduated. So like maybe a year, either or, but it doesn't matter. But I never put enough serious thought into like where do I want to go work. It just kind of all fell into place, which I'm not complaining,
Yeah.
but not the best way to go, I guess.
When you went into Marvel, I'm assuming like just a beast like that moves as fast as it does and is just like criminally understaffed. You were just kind of just thrown into the deep end. So once you were behind the curtain, I'm just curious about kind of like eye-opening moments for you from, going, like I said, just going into the beast and learning how they're made.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't too bad. I mean, there were deadlines, obviously, and
Yeah.
we all know how that things go. But wasn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, there are other reasons to not be happy at that job. It's very high stress and low reward in the sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's production. Like you have to get the books out. You're blamed if something goes wrong. No one credits you if it goes right, type of thing. It's just you kind of accept it. But honestly, because it was a staff job, there was protections of like, oh, you don't have to stay here all night, every night.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like freelance, like you got to get it done because you're the only one whose name is on the line. So, I mean, there's pluses and minuses. I prefer working a little later from home than being in the city. So that's just me.
100%. I've learned that, it's since all of this lockdown, right? I'm very fortunate that my job has just moved home. And yeah, that knowing like you're working a little later, but you can just drop the laptop and you're done versus you're working a little later and you've still got 45 minutes
Oh yeah,
before you get to go home.
looking at a clock is one of the worst things in the world, and that's the other nice thing about being freelance too. It's like if something doesn't come in and I'm waiting, I'll go walk the dog. I'll go make dinner. It doesn't matter. Like no one's breathing down my neck. You're not working at your desk right now.
Yeah.
So whatever. If it takes a little longer, at least I get breaks in a day as opposed to like 8 hours at a desk. Now go home. That's the thing.
Right. So as you were kind of going through that and I'm just curious how your eye got pulled over to the lettering side. How did that seed start to get planted?
So like I said, we would assemble the files, and the way it works is kind of the way you got the files, where you get your art and you get your lettering files. You have to assemble them in InDesign. And then I just looking at it, I was like fascinated how they work because it's vectors rather than pixels. Well, I mean it's pixels, but rasterized images.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I just looked at it and I kind of figured out how to reverse into kind of typography anyway. Like one of the things I was better at in college, so it was just a natural fit. And then, like I said, once the layoffs happened, it's like, well, I've got nothing better to do except work on stuff. So let's try something new. And so I got the books on the subject and just kind of practice and figured it out.
Right. Hearing you talk about how typography interested you, it actually makes so much sense looking back at your work, where you find moments to break out of kind of like standard it's breaking the bubble or putting a spotlight onto the moment. Like I said, just knowing your work and running it through my head, that actually makes a lot of sense why that stuff really jumps out when you do it, because there's, apparently there's a love for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm that guy that's like, someone's like, oh, look at this car. I'm like, yeah, but you see these fonts? I really am that guy.
You're critiquing the logo on the 90,000 car.
A little too often. Like, I'll go out with friends. It's like Bank Gothic, Helvetica. I'm like, what are you doing? Picking out the fonts.
I got to imagine that's just, so, I'm also a musician and a writer and stuff like that. And definitely my wife will kind of get annoyed with me every now and then when, how it's made, or like, again, as a musician, my biggest pet peeve is like when someone is playing an instrument and clearly they have no idea how to do it, and I'm looking at, this size of the screen where their hands are, and just totally out of it, and my wife didn't even notice that. So do you kind of get that same thing? Like
for sure. Like whenever I see, and when someone presents themselves as a professional and they're clearly not, and it shows, it bothers me, because like it bothers any professional at their craft. But it bothers me more because people who I was hesitant to call myself a professional for a long time, because I was like, well, I'm not there yet. It's one of those things, like maybe I'm too hard on myself, but it's also, you kind of have to wait for the other professionals to recognize it. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, you are good. It's like, oh, okay, so maybe I do understand what I'm doing here. And like I said, it just feels like sometimes people just rush to get it out there, and it's like, oh look, I'm a letterer, I'm a singer, I'm this, and it's like, no, you're not. Like, I don't want to be a jerk, but you're not. Like, you're just hurting everybody. But
I want to dig into that real quick, because like I said, I have I've taken classes, I've learned on my own. I know where I am and where I'm not. And one of the reasons, like I said, you're here is I was originally going to letter Charlie Spot, and it would have been fine. Like nobody was going to pick it up and go ew and put it back down. No one would get lost going panel to panel, page to page. But when Meredith started turning in her pages, and when Allie started turning in her colors, everybody was like elevating this book and this story. And it just hit me like, I can't be fine on top of elevation on top of elevation.
Yeah, for sure.
Then that just wouldn't have sat well with me, to like get it to the, whatever, the 10-yard line and go, we're good, let's kick that field goal.
That's the thing. It probably would have been serviceable, but in a weird way, and I'm not denigrating your skills, but like it would have dropped the quality back down a little bit, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure everything keeps rising. Like, it's one thing, like I always say, it's one thing to practice. It's one thing to do things on the side. but you can't, like, I'm going to quick sidetrack. Like, I always tell people, don't put everything in your portfolio. Like,
Yep.
the stuff that you did early on, that you were figuring things out, it's not worth putting in your portfolio, especially this day and age, because your portfolio is digital. It's online.
Mm.
It's there forever. I don't care if you've been doing this for 20 years. If somebody finds that early stuff, the stuff where you were just like figuring things out, that is now what you look like in their mind, and they're not going to hire you. I always say, like, practice, try, whatever. Not everything is meant to be seen. Some of it is just like, can I curse?
Yeah.
All right. I fucked this up. I got to deal with it and move on.
Yeah.
But like, I guess everyone's excited, and I get it. Like, yeah, you want to do this stuff. It's great, but you're so excited to get out there, you're hurting yourself, you know. And I feel the same way about people who like just rush raw talent. You know, like I've got my classes, and I teach what I know, and you know they're obviously picking up whatever I'm teaching. But I always tell them, don't rush to do something right away. Like, you have the knowledge, you don't have the skill just yet. You know, you have to keep working at it. Get yourself to that point and then start, because all you're doing is hampering yourself. You'll probably never get work because you're showing people the work in progress rather than the finished product.
Yeah. Man, that could branch into a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Because like you, I'm also a teacher. I teach. So the day job is advertising, and so I'm teaching at Boston University an advertising class. And I just had a conversation with one of my students about their portfolio, and you know, there's always the question of like, what goes into a portfolio. And echoing what you had just said, I was explaining to him, it's like, look, if you're going to put 12 or 15 pieces into it, you can't have 10 A+ stuff and then 3 B+ stuff, because it's that B+ stuff that's going to stand out, you know, and for all the wrong reasons. So you'd rather go with, you know, a smaller but fantastic portfolio than, you know, page after page of stuff.
Yeah, and like I said too, there's also a progression. Like,
yeah,
I did my stuff in college, and for college, it was fine. I recently found it when I was like digging through my attic, and I'm like, oh my god, this stuff is awful. It's dog shit. But you know that's after, let's see, when I graduated college, 15 years ago. Okay, that's after 15 years of work. Like, yes, the stuff I did as a college student is not going to hold up to the stuff I did now. But for the time and for where I was, it was fine. Like, to get into grad school, it would have been enough. To get a job today, not so much.
So, doubling back real quick to kind of the amateur versus professional, you know. And again, I'm asking this as somebody who is on that journey and who does want to get better at the craft, who appreciates the craft and knows the gap in my progression. When you do pick up a book, when you do look through a portfolio, what are some of the things that stand out that separate the two?
Well, honestly, it's just the little things. It's like, because everybody knows what things are supposed to look like, but they don't actually know what they're supposed to look like. And the example I use with my students is like, all right, let's describe a car, right? What does a car look like? Well, it's this big metal square with a door and windows on it and wheels. It's like, okay, fine. So I draw exactly what they said. So I draw a big metal square with a door, and I draw like a house door and a house window and wheels. I'm like, that's a car, right? And like, no, it's not. I'm like, exactly. Like, you described the car and I drew what you said, but it's not the thing. So a lot of people will like say, okay, what is lettering? Lettering is comic book looking fonts and word balloons and tails, and they'll put it on there, but they won't do it exactly right. And it's like, I can clearly see where you haven't found the fine details, like shaping your text and making sure the balloon is fully round rather than like pointy at the ends, and like all these little things. Like, you know, that's the thing that separates it. But you, as kind of like a layman, don't get that yet, and you really have to like dig deeper and study it, you know. And that's just where it comes in. It's like you have to look at the finer details, because like if we go back to the car thing, it's like okay, yeah, a car is a metal box, but it's shaped this way on either end, for aerodynamic reasons, and it's this way for the head of the person in the car, and the door is made, like this. And it's like, okay, now it makes more sense. We're getting detail. And it always leads to like this dejected feeling. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're learning this. You don't know it. That's exactly the point. We're gonna get you there. Because I always get, I'm not good at this already. I'm like, it's okay. You have an entire year to learn it, and you had the luxury of having someone to teach you. I had to do this by myself. So,
yeah, I mean, it's. Sorry, I got like 3 thoughts that just kind of jammed up in my head. But yeah, I mean, it's a skill, and it's one of those hidden skills. It's like, you were talking about production, being on the production side. At Marvel, you can talk about, sports referees, you don't notice the great ones, but the bad ones jump out.
Yeah. For sure.
And yeah, it's an artistic skill, that can be learned, but you got to put time into it. And yeah, that's it. Like that first page, that first story, you try and letter on your own. The learning curve, you realize just how steep it is, because it all hits you how much you don't know.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I have something, I lost it. That's all right. I'll figure it out.
I have no doubt we'll come back around it. So, how do you enjoy teaching?
I mean, I like it because it gets me out of, being in a room by myself for 12, 15 hours. The dog doesn't talk back, luckily. So, it's kind of lonely. So at least going there will make a difference. And it's nice to see people who want to learn, like that's the other thing too. It's like, there's an excitement, it's like, I was there at one point, now I can see somebody else with it, which is cool.
I have found that, so I've been doing the advertising for like 13 years at this point. And one of the reasons I do enjoy it is actually having to reteach the basics, and having to go back and think about stuff I maybe didn't think about since I was in grad school.
Oh yeah.
That first gig. And, that's actually kind of refired me up about, where I'm working right now. It's a nice reminder of those building blocks, again, that maybe you've forgotten or taken advantage of.
And I mean, that's the other thing too. Like now that I've been teaching for, second year now, I keep learning new things, I keep figuring out new tricks, and it's like, oh, I didn't even teach the last guys this because I just figured this out, but here's something new for you to use, So there's always like, I'm learning something new, which I'm then passing on, which is also nice too, because it's forcing me to think about new things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, there's the mentorship part of it as well. I absolutely will admit, is inviting in all of it. And you hear back from kids like from 6 months ago, a year ago, telling you their successes and stuff like that, and being thanked for it. It's like, that's cool. That's hopefully part of what we're here to do, right? Is like take what we learn, pass it along, and watch other people fly out and go for it.
I mean, the other nice thing about it too, and this is something I've kind of been trying to do my whole career, is like, I've always had people help me, I think we can all admit none of us has accomplished anything completely on our own. Nobody was either fully formed or just like such a savant that's like done.
Right.
Yeah, but actually, when those people help you, they're in a position above you, and there's not much you can do for them.
Right.
So I've always liked the idea of, well, someone helped me, so I'm going to help somebody else along. I mean, I don't really believe much higher power stuff, but getting some good karma can't hurt,
No, making the world, even if it's a small bit, making the world a better place is never a bad thing.
No, not at all.
You have no idea who you're talking to, the day that you're talking to them, the mental state that they're in, you have no idea what the thing you just kind of throw off could mean and affect somebody else.
And I mean, going off that too, I always tell my students, like, take care of each other, be nice to each other, because you really never know who's going to end up where. I tell them, one day one of you could be one of my editors, and if I'm a jerk to you, you really going to hire me? Like, even just on a selfish level. So just always take care of everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't pay to get pissed off at people like that, and honestly, all I can do is help you. And if it doesn't, at least you help somebody else.
Yeah. And I've definitely found parallels, like in the advertising world and the comics world, and maybe it's just the creative world. Bouncing off of what you just said is like, yeah, those when I was an intern, and I took full advantage of that, and I got into their email system and emailed all the writers and in that building and said, hey, would you look at my terrible first portfolio?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what I still remember to this day, 13, 14 years later, is 15-minute conversations that turned into half an hour into an hour, and it was these people driving that conversation.
Yeah.
And just the insight, the kindness, the tips, the encouragement that they gave me. And you just kind of realize it's this big ecosystem where the reason they helped me out is because they had somebody who helped them out. Absolutely. And the reason I'm helping these kids out is the best way I can thank those people who took the time out of their day to help me is to pay it forward to the kids coming behind us.
I mean, like, by and large, like, yeah, some people sneak through, but you really don't make it if your mentality is me and screw everybody else. Like,
right.
Yeah, some people will squeak by. We see it all the time, but like any industry doesn't survive on those people. It survives on everybody else taking care of each other and taking care of the next generation.
I wanted to first of all thank you for this time. I love picking the brains of other creative people, especially I know you can't say it for whatever reason. I'm going to say it. Experts at what they do. So I appreciate this time to get to know a little more of your background. I mean, the great thing about making comics these days is you can connect with almost anybody. The downside is their email address. They're not necessarily people.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Whatever this is, a year and a half into our relationship, that I get to tell you. It's through a green light camera, but I get to tell you face to face. Thank you so much for being the absolute pro everybody said you were. Thank you for taking something that I've loved and elevating it and showing it that same amount of love. It's a lot of fun to see your work come out. It's a lot of fun to see more people discover you and amplify you and put a spotlight on you, because it's absolutely 100% deserved. And yeah, if there are any comic creators watching this, I cannot recommend Taylor enough. I could have saved it for the outro, but no, I want to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to tell it to you while you're on camera. And yeah, man, on top of it all, I truly appreciate the times that you've kind of slowed down and held my hand
no problem.
And explained stuff to me.
It's just making my life easier anyway. So.
You know what? This is how we'll go out, as in a way to make your life easier. For any comic creators watching this right now, your top tips for please, Lord, do this to make me a letterer's job easier. How can we help you?
Let's see. Review your scripts after they're drawn. Because you might want to rearrange things to not make a flying spaghetti monster of lettering. Definitely figure out your word count, because some of you write too much. And keep in mind, the more panels, the less space, so you can't do as much. And make sure your pages are on spec. And the most important thing, hire me.
Nailed it. And that's the perfect segue. How do they hire Taylor? Where can they find you?
Okay, so you're going to go out to the woods. No, so you can find me at ghostcliffstudios.com, Taylor at ghostcliffstudios.com for the email, Twitter at Taylor Espo and at Ghostcliff, Instagram at Ghostcliff, Facebook, Ghostcliff Studios. You can run into anybody at a convention because apparently I know everybody. I mean,
it's not hard to find your work.
Yes, pretty much any place you want to find me, someone will direct you to me. But yeah, that's how you can find me, and then I can tell you, sure, yes, sure, whatever.
Well, again, thank you so much. I can't wait for people to see your work in Charlie. It's, again, something that I've been working on for years, and just watching you elevate it, has just been an absolute. Getting your pages back has been an absolute joy. So thank you for that as well. Thank you for those bursts of happiness.
It was actually a lot of fun to work on, so I'm glad.
Thank you, man. Take care, be safe, and give my best to everybody.
Thanks, man.
And that is Taylor Esposito, and I was so excited to be able to talk to him and put a spotlight on him and letters in general, because they just do not get the credit they deserve for the talent and storytelling abilities that they bring to comic books. And man, I will forever be thankful for Taylor to come in and elevate Charlie's Spot to be as good as it could be. And I think the best thing we can do to thank Taylor is to follow him. So find all those links in the description below and follow Taylor. Good dude, deserves it. And finally, if you haven't had a chance to back Charlie's Spot, we're still up and running on Kickstarter and would love for you to join the adventure and join our family. It's been amazing to watch this Charlie's Spot group grow from 4 people, Allie, Meredith, Taylor, and myself, to now exponentially that's grown, and more people get to learn about this book that I love so much, and that 4 people put everything they had into it to make it as good as possible. So check out the link, see if it's something for you, find a reward, and join the family. Thank you so much. Take care.